The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Golden Shovel Agency's March Expert Webinar Series. My name is Aaron Brissois. I'm a CEO of Golden Shovel Agency. I'm just thrilled today to be sharing a new presenter named Dean Whitaker. Dean Whitaker is the founder, president, and CEO of Whitaker Associates, and he assists on projects as a coach advisor to the team. He uses his 30 years of experience in economic development and industrial commercial real estate. Dean's background includes managing 3 local chambers of commerce and serving as a field staff person and managing director of industrial development for the state of Illinois. In addition, he's taught applied information technology for economic development for 30 years at the Economic Development Institute. Thank you for joining us today, Dean.
Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share a few thoughts with your audience about creating an age-friendly community. How do we become age-friendly? And I'll share some examples from the community in which I live, because I think it's a way to show that we're actually doing it as opposed to talking about doing it. And I think you'll find it kind of interesting. So
yeah, I think it's a really important topic. It's some topic that doesn't get discussed nearly enough. And just before we drop you into it, Dean, I just want to let everybody know they can feel free to type questions in over on the control panel on the right side. So type those in, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll ask the questions as time permits. Yep. And other than that, please enjoy the presentation. Slides and a recorded video of the presentation will be available afterwards. You can certainly get in touch with us. So take it away, Dean.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Well, as I was saying, you're going to see some examples of Holland, Michigan. Holland, Michigan is on the lake shore. It's on Lake Michigan. It's about 40 miles southwest of Grand Rapids, Michigan, about due east across the lake from Milwaukee, to give you some orientation. What I plan to do today is talk about the why, how, and what of becoming an age-friendly community. So that's kind of the gist of where we're headed. I'm going to first talk a little bit about the why, and there's really 3 parts to the why. One is economic, one is social, and one is political. And when you look at the purpose of economic development, it's really the intent is to grow the economic pie, make the economic pie bigger by bringing in money from outside the community. So if you think about an age-friendly community, one of the things that you can attract with being an age-friendly community are people with money. And one of the nice things is age-friendly people bring the money in their pocket. And so they, or in their 401ks or in their Social Security payments or however else they bring it to you. But it's a way to expand your economic pie by addressing the needs of that particular audience by becoming age-friendly. One of the other things that I think the older adults do for a community is they add to the social fabric, because age-friendly people have time, first of all, to attend some of the civic activities, including city council meetings and chamber board meetings, and to participate in a lot of organizations. So they tend to be very active. They participate in community theater, local symphonies, and also they attend the religious services and help the faith community within the city. And the last thing about them is they tend to be very politically active. And we see that in things like AARP and its lobbying group in Washington, and they also tend to vote. Interesting enough, here in Holland, Michigan, our older adults are strong supporters of educational bond issues, although they don't have children in the school system at that point. So it's a belief for the common good that our community portrays. I see that as revitalization. I grew up in a small community of 1,500 people called Earlville, Illinois, small farm town in Illinois. So I understand small town. It's actually pretty sad situation in that the only industry left the community, taking with it 300 jobs when the work was moved to Juarez, Mexico. And the town's never really recovered since. It's about 75 miles west of Chicago. But there also is, what's left in the community is an aging population. And so as older adults have remained, and some of the younger people have left to go to the big city and bright lights, but the retirees still bring money to the community. So there's a way to go about reviving a small town by attracting the retirees to locate there. Remember, one of the things that a retiree is concerned with is how not to run out of money before they run out of time. I'll say it that way. Think about it this way. One of the biggest concerns a lot of retirees have is property tax. So you buy a house. So here in Michigan, my wife and I live in a very modest house of about $150,000 to $200,000, nice house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about a half-acre lot, and in a comfortable part of the city. We pay about $3,000 a year in property tax. When you talk to somebody in New York City or New York State, for that matter, their property tax is 4 times that much and goes up every year. And so the idea is to be able to stay in your home as an older adult and not be pushed out of it by an escalating property tax issue. So that's one of the things that a small community can offer, is kind of a stable tax structure, and also be able to provide a lot of the amenities that older adults are looking for. One of the things that I think about is this is a huge market. Now, I gave a TED talk, or actually a TEDx talk earlier last week, and talked about what it is that the baby boomers are. And in fact, I happen to be one. I was born in 1947. Thank you very much. And so I'm considered the front end of the baby boomers. I am representing a baby boomer generation that contains 76 million people. 10,000 of us are eligible to retire every day for the next 20 years. I don't know if you realize how big that is. That is humongous opportunity. And we're looking for good places to live, comfortable, with some of the amenities, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just think about the market potential of addressing the needs of baby boomers is gigantic. And I do mean gigantic. We're the largest demographics group to hit the school system, to hit the job market, to hit the healthcare system, and now the retirement community. So we're a humongous market opportunity is what I'm trying to get at. And we're not done yet. We're not ready to kick back and hit the rocking chair and sit on the front porch, because we're an active group. I grew up as a baby boomer listening to the radio. Now you think about our lifespan and what we bring to the party. We bring perspective, because I was listening to the Lone Ranger on a radio, if you can imagine that. I still remember that. And I watched men land on the moon, and I watched the fall of the Berlin Wall. So we bring perspective to the party is one of the things we can bring, along with some of our conservative ways, perhaps. But we bring perspective. But we want to be active. Remember that. Think about it this way: the old 70, well, the old 60. Well, let me say it this way: the new 70 is the old 60. So even at 70, I feel active. I'm not anywhere near ready to kick back and sit down and do nothing. I'm still active in my business. I don't see any need or desire other than my health is good. As long as I have good health, I'm good to go. So we want to be active. Yes, I mean active in the sense of I work a little less. I want to play more. But what assets does your community have to help support an active and aging lifestyle? So think about that in terms of what you have to offer. There, according to the Portland State Institute on Aging, there are really 5 things that we're seeking, and we're going to go into these in a little more detail. But one is inclusion. We want to be included in things. We don't want to be sidelines. We want to be part of what's happening. We want our communities to be accessible. How do we get around within the community? We want it to support active aging. We also want to focus on being enabled rather than disabled. And I see it as really a shift in how we perceive it. And we want it to be intergenerational. We don't want to live in a place with just a bunch of old people. So we want to be intergenerational in our approach. Now, one of the things to think about in terms of what an aging population or older adults are looking for is something that you have control over. And one of those things you have control over is what's called your built environment. In Holland, Michigan, we have 26 miles of bike paths that go from Holland, Michigan to Grand Haven, Michigan, and those are it's a grid of bike paths that we have available to us. Those are part of our built environment. We've built bike trails, we've built outdoor spaces, we've built concert halls, we have community gardens, we have a senior center, and more. So if you look at it in terms of, we have an aquatic center, we have a library, we have beaches, we have a nice downtown selection of restaurants with outdoor eating in the summertime. And that bottom right-hand picture is important, and it's something very simple that a lot of people don't think of, and that is crosswalks in the middle of the block. A lot of our cities were built for cars. They were built for automobiles, and the blocks are quite long. And when you want to get from one side of the street to the other, it's really hard to do. And so what Holland has done is we've inserted crosswalks mid-block and put in stop signs. And if you notice on the right hand, there's a little shelter. So if it's raining, you can stand in there and wait for. And then there's benches up and down the street. So there's just things that are built that you can do, and even small towns. Now, as I said, I grew up in a small community. We could do that. We can do these things. Some of these things we can have dining on outside. We could have. Well, I don't know about the beaches, but we have a nice, I grew up in a small town library. And so I just think there's a lot of things that we have to offer in terms of our built environment. One of the things that makes us a little bit unique, that picture in the upper left-hand corner is of our brand new, coming on stream in October, our new power plant replacing this is a natural gas combined cycle twin engine power plant. It's a 40-year investment for our community on generating our own electricity. We have generated our own electricity in Holland, Michigan since the late 1800s when we created our first municipal power plant. We're sidelining our coal plant and put in this natural gas fired plant. A couple things about the power plant that are a little bit unique. One is it has a visitors gallery designed to teach us about how our electricity gets made. It's also in the center of what's called an energy park. So it's literally built in the middle of a park on Lake Makatawa. So it's kind of a cool place. The center picture, upper center, is of our piping system. That's the main pipelines for our snowmelt system. On the blurry right-hand picture is an example of our snowmelt. So downtown Holland, Michigan, we have 4.9 miles of snowmelt. So you can go 4.9 miles, and we get about 154 inches of snow per year in a normal year, which I don't know what normal is anymore, but this year I think we got maybe 20 inches of snow. But the idea is we have a snowmelt system, and as you can see from the bottom center picture, it melts the snow on the sidewalk, and in the upper right-hand corner, it melts all the snow in our downtown. So we have no snow downtown to speak of. And so it will effectively melt the snow both on the sidewalks and the streets in our downtown area. And all of that is the new power plant allowed us to quintuple the geographic area of our snowmelt system. So we're now expanding it. It'll go from our senior center to the downtown, to our library, to our city hall, and then all of our downtown will be covered by a snowmelt system, which is pretty interesting. It came about by an entrepreneur who saw a similar system in the Netherlands, came back, and Ed Prince was his name, and he said, we're going to do this in Holland, Michigan. So about 1990s, they made a decision to install a snowmelt system. Pretty disruptive, as you could well imagine. Our downtown merchants were not too happy initially, but I think later have found it to be a huge benefit. We have no empty stores downtown Holland, Michigan. No empty retail, and no empty second floor either, which is where many of our office are located. So think snowmelt. Not that you can do snowmelt, it's not for everyone, but I just want to let you know this is part of our built environment here. One of the other things we've also in the midst of doing is installing a 1 gig fiber, first of all through our downtown, and secondly throughout our whole community. And so you wonder, and by the way, that's a municipally owned power plant. It provides a surplus of about $30 million a year to the city. And our electric rates are about 20% below commercial rates from the surrounding area. So it pays for itself, it melts our snow, it generates a surplus, and it's going to help us fund and install a 1 gig broadband fiber to the community. So we're really excited about this. We've had a pilot underway now for about a year. We had 4 locations downtown. It's panned out. We have the engineering done. Construction will start in March. We'll have 1 gigabit fiber downtown by September of this coming year. So, and you say, well, why does fiber matter to older adults? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. It's going to allow me to stay in my home longer. It's going to allow me to do remote medical monitoring of my health. It's going to be able to allow my daughter to check in with me once in a while and just make sure that I've taken my meds and done some other things when I get to that stage. So and it also allows for remote medical services. I mean, it has a huge upside to it. And also we think it'll help connect our community, connect us to each other. It'll allow businesses to partner with other people. My little company, Whitaker Associates, we have an office in Kathmandu, Nepal with 5 people. We have 2 people here in Holland, Michigan, and 5 research people in Kathmandu, Nepal, all because of broadband services. We can do that. One of the other things that seniors become concerned about, I say seniors, elder adults, is how do I get around in the community if I don't have a car, if I can't drive? How do I get around? What if I'm disabled? How do I get around? Well, we took our train station and turned it into a transportation center. And so now we have a bus system. By the way, Holland, Michigan's about 30,000 people. So I get it. We're a little bit bigger than some of the folks on the line. But at the same time, it's just giving you some ideas. So we reconditioned our old train station and turned it into a transportation hub. We have Amtrak service to Chicago. Leaves here at 6:30, gets back here about 9:30 at night. So we can go into the city, big city for the day. We have bus services. Actually, I think there's 19 buses that cover the city. We can jump on a bus and go out and get our groceries if we need to, or some other ways. So we have a bus system, and also it's handicap accessible. If you notice that bus in the upper right-hand corner, it also has a bike rack on the front of it, so you can take your bicycle with you too. So one of the things that we're being engaged. This is the picture on the upper left-hand corner is really about a community planning exercise. This is called Future Search, and the fellow on the bottom right-hand corner is actually the mayor of Zeeland, Michigan. So it's a region-wide planning effort about choosing a future rather than letting future happen. So we're very deliberate about our future. We plan it, and then we implement our plan. So it's really about the built environment. The picture on the upper right-hand corner is a little bit big for a big environment, but something to think about. The bottom left-hand picture is of the Dutch. And one of the things we're striving for here is both diversity. Our community has struggled with diversity over the years, and we're making a real push on diversity. So that's one of the areas that we have to improve on. And the bottom right-hand picture, I put it in there because robots are in our future. As you perhaps know, Japan has been leading a forefront in robotics to take care of older adults because their demographics indicates that there aren't going to be young people or even perhaps immigrants to come in and take care of them in their old age. And so they're building robots to do that. If you haven't seen the movie, The Robot and Frank, it's worth a view. Because it's really about an older adult whose son buys him a robot to keep him company, and it's a kind of a serious, but it's a comedy too. So The Robot and Frank would be kind of a fun thing for you to watch sometime, because it really talks about a relationship between a machine and a person and what that might look like. So that's kind of the why I think you might want to consider working towards becoming, and I say working towards, I don't think it's ever done. I always think there's more things to do relative to being age friendly. And when I say age friendly, I want to also be sure that you understand all ages, not just older. So it needs to be intergenerational in terms of your approach. Attracting and retaining, the how question. How do you go about attracting and retaining older adults and young people too, for that matter? It's not much different if you're active in economic development to attracting companies. It's the same question. What is it that the older adult, or what is it that they want? What do they value in terms of how do they go about doing so? So I say seek first to understand what is it that your older adults in your community want and need. And so that's one of the things to consider. I'm going to kind of stop right about here and ask Victor if he would to launch a couple polls. Now, this is going to be a little tricky, and so I'm going to ask you to bear with me on this one. But I wanted you to kind of get a sense for what to look for as you go about looking at your community and trying to understand how age-friendly it is. So this is a chance for you just to indicate how age-friendly. We're going to look at 8 different categories. And Victor, if you'd launch our first poll for us.
Sure thing.
So how would you rate your community, 5 being most age-friendly, for housing barrier-free, wheelchair accessible, and single story? So 5 being the highest. How would you rate your community in terms of how, from a housing point of view, how age-friendly is the housing within your community? And if you would just take a moment and select 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, in terms of the most age-friendly, how would you rank your particular community? So just click on your button and what you think. How age-friendly is your place? Are they all registered, Victor? I don't see the result. But...
Just give me 1 sec.
Okay. Whoop. So you give it a 3 and no 5s. That's interesting. So we have some places to work. So you're kind of average in terms of how age-friendly you think your communities are. Just to give you an idea, now these are the kinds of things that you could do locally with a group of people, and then be able to think about, well, let's evaluate how we are, and then let's build a plan, and then let's implement that plan. Let's launch the next poll, which is really about transportation. And so how age-friendly is transportation in your city, state, or county? How age-friendly is transportation? How easy is it for me as a older adult, we'll say, to get around within your community? Do you have ride sharing? Do you have Uber? Do you have a bus system? Remember, you could do Uber in a town of 1,500 people. All it takes is a couple people willing to become Uber drivers or Lyft or whatever service you want to use, and then you have a ride-sharing system in your community. Easy to do, doesn't cost anything, and provides transportation. How do I get to my doctor's appointments if I'm not unable to drive? How do I get groceries or go visit my friends? And so Uber and some of these other ride-sharing services are a great way to do that. How transportation mobility is really the issue. How would you rank your mobility of your place? And so, would you? just share that again, Victor? I think I knocked my slide off there.
Sure, give me just 1 sec. Okay. Can you see it now?
Well, I'll do it this way. So you're saying, from a community point of view, transportation, not too bad, but a few fives, but still places to improve. That's cool. Thanks. Would you launch our next poll, please, which is going to be on outdoor spaces?
Sure.
So how would you rate your community for outdoor spaces, building, parks, trails, bike paths, libraries, 1 to 5? Share that poll with us, please. Can you share that poll, Victor? So you're a little better shape on outdoor spaces. So buildings and parks and bike paths and libraries, you're getting on. So that's one of your strengths. So when you're marketing your community, think about it in terms of what your strengths are too. So you could these are your long suits. These are the things you want to brag about in your promotions. Let's launch one more, and I think we'll kind of shorten these up a little bit in the interest of time. Let's do the communication information one, Victor.
Okay.
So how do you rate your community for communications, community calendars, local news, broadband internet? These are pretty important. What's the ability of your community to communicate internally or externally? How's the communication system? And by the way, this is an area, 2 areas that Holland, Michigan decided to focus on improving. This was one of them, and our broadband service is part of that. And the other was our transportation system. Even though we have a bus system, our people feel it's still a little hard to get around. But in particular, our newspaper is kind of it's part of a conglomerate. It's not so much locally owned anymore. It's mostly national news, and it doesn't really help us communicate very well. So let's see the results. So you're feeling pretty good about your communication system and how you get around. That's cool. Nice. Let's just do a couple more. Civic participation and employment, since that's kind of an economic development topic. Remember that many boomers have not saved enough to retire, and so therefore they're going to be working into their senior years, and therefore provide a large pool of part-time workers. And these are people with experience. They have a work ethic. They have a lot of other things going for them where they can contribute a great deal, both in terms of mentoring and helping startup companies. They also tend to volunteer a lot, some paid, some not. And so how would you rate your community civic participation in employment opportunities for older adults? So pretty good. You're pretty strong in terms of participation, employment opportunities, and volunteer opportunities. Very cool. Nice job. There's 2 other categories that we're going to skip over, but just know that they're there as you put this together for your community. And one of those is the respect and social inclusion. How inclusive is your community would be one. And the other is social participation. Are there educational opportunities available, and what do some of those look like? So what's your social environment look like? How accepting is your community of the newcomers, of the newbies? And how willing are organizations to reach out and make them feel at home? One of the things we strive to do here is have people feel like this is home. You know, when you ask somebody, where are you from? If they say, oh, we're from Wisconsin, well, we're not getting the job done. If they say we're from Holland, Michigan, formerly from Wisconsin, then we're getting our job done. So how accepting of others are you, and how accepting of newbies? One of the mistakes I made several years ago in attracting, I worked at a small town, 6,500 people, county of 20,000. We attracted, in 3 years, we attracted 1,500 new jobs. A lot of change in the community because of that. The next election, the community voted out all of the city council and the mayor out of office. Why? Because there was too much change in too short a period of time. What I should have done, in retrospect, was have each of the families be adopted by a local family and be introduced to the community that way. So just some of the lessons as a 27-year-old that I learned the hard way. But something to think about: how accepting of newcomers is your area, and what could you do to make it more so? What are some of the things you might do to make it easier for them? One of the things that our entrepreneur who helped build our snowmelt system did, he had his daughter go around the world, literally, and survey the best senior centers that they could find, came back here, bought an old school building, converted it into Evergreen Commons, and created a senior center. Well, why would a manufacturer of automobile parts do that? Well, Ed Prince always said he was building a community that happened to produce auto parts. He wasn't making auto parts, he was building a community. And one of the things he realized, in order to attract the talent that he was going to need for his company, they were going to have senior parents that they needed to take care of. So he went out and addressed the needs of his employees' parents as a way to attract the talent that he needed for his company to make auto parts. So this is the senior center. They have about 4,000 members. It costs you $50 a year to belong. They have an art studio, an auditorium, billiards, coffee shop, computers, dance studio, dining room, fitness center, fitness studios, a library, locker rooms, lots of stuff, woodworking shop. It's very much of a community. Now, one of the things they also did, if you look at the top three categories, the Commons is it's an active living environment for older adults. The day center is actually a adult daycare. Now, as we age, some of us develop mental limitations, we'll say it that way. And as a result of that, our children want to know that we're in a safe environment for the day while they go to work. So this is an adult daycare center, part of Evergreen. And the third category was in-home care. So, my parents need a little help fixing food. We want somebody to drop in and check on them. We want that activity. So those are three things. Again, $50 a year to belong. So it's not outrageously expensive. We're blessed in Holland by something called Hope College. And what that brings to us is educational opportunities for older adults to attend class. It brings a lot of youth to our community, as well as some protesters, which I'll say community dialogue. It brings that, and it brings sporting events. So we have some activities to attend. Some of the other events, because we're a Dutch community settled in 1874 by the Dutch, we have an authentic, original windmill that was dismantled in the Netherlands, brought here and assembled. At the first week in May, we'll have our Tulip Festival. And if you're out and about and so inclined, stop by, because I think you'll find it to be spectacularly beautiful. We have over 1 million tulip bulbs that get planted every year and bloom, and it's pretty spectacular. We have street dancing. Again, it's a way of celebrating the Dutch heritage of the community. And by the way, we also have a Cinco de Mayo celebration. 22% of our population in Holland, Michigan is Latino. And as a result of our immigrants coming here to help harvest our blueberries and some of our other produce, who eventually stayed and started businesses and now are integrated into our community. We have been visited by ICE, by the way, and that's a whole nother topic we won't go into at the moment, but we have a lot of Latino population, and we honor them too with the Cinco de Mayo Day, which is May 5th, and our tulip time starts on May 7th. So the question is, back to you, how age-friendly is your area? We've talked about some of those topics. So just kind of wrapping up, we've talked about the how, or the why, first of all, thinking about both the social, political, and economic benefits of attracting older adults. We've talked about it being another why was the opportunity to revitalize small communities by attracting these older adults that will help grow our economic pie, take advantage of our stable tax structure, and also contribute in the way of social activities as well as political interests. We talked about 10,000, the size of the market, 10,000 baby boomers eligible to retire every day. Yes, that is fact. Here in Holland, Michigan, we're 33,000 people. At that rate, it would take 3 days for everyone in Holland, Michigan to be retired if all of us were eligible to retire. So you can begin to see the enormous opportunity, and as some in Congress will say, concern. I mean, we're all going to be hitting the Medicare, we're all going to be hitting Social Security, and we're all going to be hitting the other needs that older adults have. So kind of hang on to your hat on that one. But at the same time, creates tremendous opportunity for us. Remember that we're active. We're not sitting back in our rocking chair or hanging out and watching soap all day. But we're active adults, so you want to think about that. Remember about your built environment. What is it that you could build or create physically to address the needs of older adults? And then also, what is it that you could do relative to your social structure to include? We have something here called the Holland Association of Senior Professionals, which is a group of older adults who bring in speakers and hold classes and pick out a topic of something they want to learn about. Older adults want to learn too. I mean, I think learning is something that goes with the territory. Think about communication. How does your community communicate now? And how will it communicate in the future? What will it look like in 2025? How do you address some of the communication needs then? Transportation, how do you get around? How does your community connect itself physically? How do I get in and around my community, and what are some of the things I might do there, such as Uber and Lyft and some of the other services? Also, how diverse is your community? How willing is it to accept newbies and be open and accepting of those? And looking at the social environment, what is it that you could do to enhance the social environment of your community? And think about it, the senior centers. What is it that the senior centers do, and how could they be enhanced to attract and support older adults? And then how could you use multi-generational? So one of the things that we're seeing here is older adults. For example, I mentor Andrew, who's now an 8th grader, but I've been mentoring Andrew in school since he was in 4th grade. We meet once a week, talk about how school's going, talk about what issues he's having, and kind of have fun too. It's a chance to be a bit of a grandparent to him, and to be aware of his needs, and watching him grow up, watching him learn along the way. So we call it here, it's called Hope. It's a Kids Hope, and this is called Kids Hope Next. I think Kids Hope is in 33,000. Well, I know it's in 33 different places here in Michigan, and it's spread across the country. So it's a program for that. If you have a college or university in your community, big asset. Play that card hard, because that's going to help you sell your community. And don't overlook at some of the events. I remember we did a webinar a few years ago, and one of the topics was festivals, and one city attracted tourism through its outhouse festival, and another one had a day where they closed down Main Street and you brought your lawn chair, they brought in entertainment. So I mean, there's things you could be doing that don't cost much that could be kind of fun to do. So take a look at how age-friendly you are. Think about the categories that we've talked about of housing, transportation, outdoor spaces, community support, communications, civic participation, respect and social inclusion, and social participation. So rate yourself on those, bring a group of people together, figure out what you're good at and promote that, and figure out the areas where you can improve and design a plan and work on that. The last is, the what. We've talked about the why, how, and what. And one of the things I want to leave you with is kind of a challenge. And my challenge for you is really to think about, develop a plan, sit down with a group, evaluate your community, and develop a plan to both promote it in terms of how do you market your community to older adults, and secondly, how do you go about improving it? What are some of the things? Pick one or two, organize around that, and implement it. And you'll see, I mean, it's about becoming age-friendly. You don't become age-friendly instantly. You become it over time. And so it's a process that your community needs to look at. It doesn't happen instantly. So that's pretty much all that I had to cover today in our 45 minutes that we had to chat. I'd be glad to respond to any questions that you might have. You can enter those into the question window on the control panel, and I'll be glad to respond to those. You'll also have my email address in our contact material in the PowerPoint, so you can drop me a note or give me a call if there's a question you have about how your community can become age-friendly and go about marketing to and attracting older adults. By the way, Holland, Michigan was written up in Money Magazine as one of the top 10 places in the country to retire. So as you can tell, that kind of publicity helps. My neighbor is a retired president from a community college in North Carolina who chose here based on that article that he read in Money Magazine. So get some publicity on your efforts, and best wishes for you.
Great. Hey, thanks, Dean. That was a really interesting topic. Thanks for your presentation. I have a couple of questions to field you. One is, how can you go about getting some metrics or modeling the benefit of attracting older population to your community to convince a board that might be very set on attracting millennials or just attracting a certain type of, although certainly workforce attraction is the game these days, but this is certainly an interesting way to grow the economy and diversify a population. So do you have any recommendations on how to get some numbers behind that to show the impact that it's going to have?
That's a great question, Aaron. A couple thoughts about it. AARP, the Association of Retired People, may have some data that could support that. I think also there's a number of organizations that address the needs of older adults. It's a little. I'm trying to think of a good source of metrics. Demographics, Census Bureau. Back to the size of the market, I think, is one of the things. And back to the issue of attracting millennials. Part of that attraction of millennials is they also have aging parents to think about. And so if you provide an age-friendly community, it helps to attract the millennials too, in the sense that I have a good friend now that's in the process of moving his parents back from Florida because they're in their 80s. They can no longer stay by themselves, but we have a very extensive assisted living center here where his parents will likely choose to locate. But in terms of convincing your board, I think the place I would go is monetarily, and look at, okay, so what can you do? What do baby boomers bring with them usually a 401k, they bring their retirement funds, they'll bring their income from pensions and Social Security and dividends. So I think there's some places you could look, Aaron, that would help look at it from an economic point of view. And I think talking to the banks would be another. I mean, talk to the banks in your community and ask them. I mean, they're not going to tell you individual accounts, but ask them what kind of contribution do older adults bring to our community. And if you just look at the average Social Security payment per month, I don't know what it is yet, we could look it up, but say that it's $1,500 per month per retiree. And, you know, it doesn't take much before you have a significant amount of funds coming into your community based on the age demographics of the community. And so depending on the place, your ability to attract millennials is going to be limited because they don't necessarily want to be in a rural area unless, as in our case, we go after them at the 10-year reunion, class reunion point, because by that time they've had their first children and want to be closer to their parents. So there's timing involved in attracting older adults, and there's timing involved in attracting the younger people. One of the issues to look at is what does it cost to retire in the state of New York versus what does it cost to retire in Holland, Michigan? And if I'm going to live to be in my 80s or 90s, how do I make sure I don't run out of money before I run out of time? So those are a couple of things to think about. But great question, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a second one. Based on the polls, it looks like a lot of the attendees today have communities that have some of the features that you're speaking of, making it age-friendly. What thoughts do you have as far as how a community might market their age-friendly assets to this unique population?
Yeah, I would be a little bit cautious on this one, but I'll recommend it anyway. And that is almost all site location projects, including choosing a place to retire to, start on the internet. So your website is going to become kind of the first go-to place that I'm going to look. And if you had a tab, one of your tabs could be age-friendly, and then go into all the attributes that you have rated high on your evaluation of how age-friendly you are, and list those attributes. And then list a contact and have this be a person that they could contact relative to more information about being about the age friendliness of your place. And I think testimonials from people that have moved there from elsewhere would be a really slick way to go about sharing with others what experience people have had when they've chosen to retire in your area.
Yeah, sounds good. I'd add to that that if you're going to communicate some messaging out about doing some external communications, social media would be useful if you use the right channels, and particularly LinkedIn works well for people that are still in their careers or at the end of their careers. You can still contact them. And it seems there's a pretty good user base of older population using LinkedIn. There's an incredibly strong user base of the older population on Facebook.
Yep, you bet. And you can do a great job of marketing on Facebook.
Yeah, so if you're going to have messages crafted to promote an age-friendly community, Facebook's, along with, of course, the website being the base to send the traffic back to, certainly would be a strong channel.
Mm-hmm. Good thought.
Okay, well, do you have any closing thoughts, Steve? Otherwise, there doesn't look like there's any other questions in right now.
Nope, I think that's fine. If anyone does, they can reach me at dean@whitakerassociates.com, and I'd be glad to respond to those, or they can call me, and they'll have all this information will be in the PowerPoint, in the slides when they receive them, and I'd be glad to discuss our age friendliness and how we got to be the way we are, and kind of where we're going next. Might be of interest to folks too. But back to broadband services is probably what our next move is in terms of becoming more age friendly. Thanks, Aaron, and
okay.
Thanks to Golden
Yep,
Shovel.
sounds good. You can feel free to contact Victor over on our team. His email is vperez, P-E-R-E-Z, at goldenshovel.com to get copies of the slides and links to the video. And other than that, Dean, thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to having you again sometime. And as far as the attendees, thanks, guys, for paying attention today, and we'll hopefully see you next month. So thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Have a good day. Bye.
Yep.